and welcome to the Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
And welcome Whovians to our Doctor Who review for episode 2 of season 12 called Spyfall, part 2.
Part dos.
We had a really good response from our previous episode's review, so we want to thank you all for liking, subscribing, and all that stuff to the channel. But let's get into this episode, which is a continuation, which is something they didn't say they didn't do last year. They didn't have last season. They didn't have two-parters,
Right? Yeah, no, they didn't at all.
or an overall story arc.
Yes. So that, just to dive right into it, that really feels like what they're trying to set up here with the bombshell at the end.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the episode overall, and then we'll get into some spoiler talk towards the end. But let's since we really didn't talk about what we're going to do before we started the show, because sound. Let's talk about the episode overall. Overall, this is a really good follow-up to the previous episode.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it follows again along the James Bond, but also just the spy genre kind of in general.
Ryan directly telling him what the plan was going to be.
Yeah.
And Yaz like, stop telling what the plan is. Oh, yeah, right, okay.
And they actually finally get to use some of the gadgets
Yes.
that they introduced
Yes.
in the last episode. Poorly, but they used them.
Some stormtrooper aim going on in there for a little bit.
Well, it's hard to aim shoes. And cufflinks.
But I think overall I'm like really happy with the continuation from the previous story and leaning, continuing on with the theme of the James Bond stuff and continuing on like with the bombshell that happened last week. We won't spoil that until we get to the spoiler talk later, but the bomb they dropped on us last week, and leaning into the interaction that means between the Doctor and that character.
Right.
Like, and like a lot of the episode, like we're going to have to go back and rewatch it. We've only watched it the one time. We just got done watching it here in the States in Arizona.
Right.
And then we'll have to go back and watch it again. But
I want to watch both episodes just all the way through.
Yeah. And they kept dropping stuff where it was like, but that means, but this means, but that happened. Yeah. And it's Doctor Who. And one of the things you have to understand with Doctor Who is continuity, schmontinuity.
Yes, because you have different writers and different directors. And
it's hard to talk about Doctor Who overall without sometimes you have to allow yourself to give to suspend some disbelief, or at least some of what you already know from previous Doctors and previous series.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you lived through the Moffat era,
right,
where there would be like these threads that would just completely be dropped and never be brought up again.
How many times did Clara die because of she's leaving the show, she's not leaving the show?
Yeah,
she
the whole Clara souffle girl, impossible girl. She's a Dalek. She's that whole thing. Still, we've rewatched
a lot of the Clara stuff.
And it still loses me.
And it's not like it's something new. Like even the previous, like the classic Doctors from early on to Baker.
They
and
did those more like soap operas. They were more of a
serialized,
and I don't know kind of what happened with specifically Moffat, but just these stories that just never went anywhere.
I really think that Moffat had a really good idea and then came up with another really good idea and decided to go with that new idea and then came up with another idea. And so because of that, you have to understand that some stuff that we know in the Doctor Who universe is going to change or be adapted to something new or manipulated into something new or blatantly forgotten.
Right. right, may not have ever actually really happened.
Right. Right.
Timey-wimey.
Right. And that's the good and bad thing about a show based on time travel is that you're going to have these questions that you're going to have about overall story canon,
Right.
where you're
Yeah.
you're gonna question stuff.
Yeah.
And
There is no book like there is for Star Wars where you can go and open it up and go in in Doctor Who era blah blah blah.
Right.
This is what happened. Yeah.
right. There's no, yeah. And so with that understanding, they introduced some concepts in this episode where it was like, oh, that means a lot of different things and can mean a lot of different things going forward. And I think that we'll get into the spoiler end of what that means in a few minutes. But I think for a one-off episode, this is one of those times where you need to watch the previous episode to make this episode make sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
And that's how I like Doctor Who.
it's not a one-off. It's a part two.
Right.
So, but it is actually a little different. So the last one was very spy James Bond, and this one is too, but it's also kind of a callback to last season. There was a lot of historical references,
Yeah.
people brought up, and so within this kind of James Bond spy thriller thing, there was some time travel where she actually went back and met a couple of women in history who were responsible for the computer age
yeah.
that we're in now. I mean, what they
And
did.
then what was it? Nora, who was the first female dropped behind German lines in World War
Yeah.
II. So,
But yeah, both of
Yeah.
them were specifically involved in in computer advancement and,
Yeah.
and information advancements.
yeah.
So
And I liked this way of doing inclusion, where it wasn't necessarily something that was just thrown in your face. It was Doctor Who showing, remember these people? These people were important. And,
well, the point is nobody remembers because nobody actually
right.
knows who. I mean, these are
yeah.
some pretty some characters from history that nobody. Well, I didn't learn about them in school, but they were actually pretty important. And oh, by the way, they just happened to be women, but that really wasn't.
That wasn't even really a thing. It was just they were important people
Yeah.
who helped with the building blocks of where we get today.
Yeah.
Just like oh my God, he just went away. Benedict Cumberbatch played him in the Imitation Game.
Imitation Game. Yeah.
Like he was also important into the
Yeah.
continuation of computers and stuff like that.
Yeah. Crack in the codes
the
and
Enigma machines and
yeah.
stuff like that. So it's I love part of the reason why I love the show is because they introduce these people from history that were lost to time and aren't really taught.
Yeah.
In the schools, especially here in the States. And so, like, we're in the middle of the episode and we're both on our phone, like, who is that? Like, hold on, is that person real? And like,
Yeah.
so we're trying to learn about history and trying to watch the show.
Yeah, and they had introduced Ada originally, and she was kind of from the Victorian era, and I originally thought she was the Ada from, and I don't know the name of the episode, but it was the Mr. Sweet episode.
When Matt Smith
With Matt Smith, and he is the monster, and
Monster is all
Ada
red.
is blind, and
Yeah.
she takes care of the monster. But that turned out not to be who that was. Apparently, was it Nora?
Nora's the World War II girl.
No, Ada
yeah.
is actually introduced in one of the Big Finish audio
Yeah,
books with Thor. And they actually, I think maybe it's an older, she was pretty young
right.
in this, and
Right.
I think it's a little bit of an older character, but
And that something that they said they weren't going to do, but now they're doing it this season, and I love this, is now they're introducing characters they introduced in the Big Finish stuff.
Right.
Which as a Star Wars person who loves the canon in the movies, but also the TV shows and the cartoons and the books,
Yeah.
and like I love all that. So
Yeah.
now I'm like, I have to go back and learn. I have to go back and listen to all the Big Finish stuff,
Yeah.
and have that, like, all those characters are now
And
open game.
I have a couple of those in my
Yeah,
Audible,
yeah,
so I'll
I
have
love
to
that.
see if
Okay,
that
let's
one's in
talk about some spoiler stuff, because you can't talk about this episode without the big stuff that happens at the end. So if you haven't watched the episode, spoilers.
there.
But
So watch it, come back.
in the previous episode, they reintroduced the Master, and we talked about in our review last week about how, like, we're confused and how the Master could be back, and is this between Saxon and Missy, and is this post Missy, and all that kind of information is kind of going on in our head while we're doing the review. There's been some stuff that's come out since then that kind of help explain the timetable. This really might be the Master that in between Saxon and Missy. We don't quite get. We're not to Missy yet. It's not a direct. Saxon doesn't regenerate into Missy directly. We eventually get to Missy, so this could be one of the.
That's fair, because they don't actually show that, and Saxon. Yeah, because he goes down in the elevator.
Yeah.
And they actually reference at one point. Jodie Whittaker asks him how his shoulder is, and Saxon was shot in the shoulder by Missy and then went down in the elevator, but he shot her first.
Yeah,
so
I love that. Like, with one simple line, you kind of help clarify, at least for us as fans, kind of where we are in the back to the whole overall story arc, and
it's acknowledging what happened.
Yeah,
a season and a half ago.
But the big thing that happens in this episode is the two big things that I took from this episode. One is the discussion about technology, and you blindly agree to allow us to use your photos and your search history, and we have control of you, and everybody's connected to their phones. I'm just as guilty as everybody else, but at this point in time, I really don't care. But the idea that our information is out there even more in the world.
Yeah,
was kind of
we could go down in a whole big rabbit hole about the acknowledgement, the approval that you have to check every time you do anything on the internet, and how if you don't check the I approve or I agree, then you don't get the app or the thing. Yeah. So you're kind of it's really not a choice.
I really feel that speech that Barton is doing at the end, and he sends out the text worldwide that the human race is going to end. He has this big old long speech, and the Solarian,
no,
I don't remember what the lighty people are.
Very weird.
But he has this big old long speech about how the world is coming to an end, and at no point in time does he say the word upgrade.
Yeah.
As soon as you say the word upgrade, everybody knows it's the Cybermen.
They looked like Cybermen behind the yellow glowy thing.
And a couple of times we've been this episode specifically, we were like, they're Cybermen, they're Cybermen, they're Cybermen. And he says everything but upgrade.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that they kind of leaned into that speech that way. And I really feel like they're going to come back somewhere down the line in the season and stuff.
Maybe come through from their dimension into ours, and then they will be Cybermen. I mean, they really did look like
the history of Cybermen is so blurry that sure, they're from another dimension. I don't care. Like I love the Cybermen as a bad guy, because they're not really.
No, they're Bill.
Like I said, I don't really care about the history of the Cybermen, because they're not really bad guys. They're just they're neutral. They're neutral evil. Like, they're not trying to conquer people just to conquer people. They're trying to really, like, improve humanity.
They're assimilating.
They're assimilating. Borg. They're Borg, very much. The Daleks are just trying to kill everybody.
Yeah.
And so the Cybermen aren't really trying to do that. They're just trying to upgrade everybody. And so I kind of like them as a continuing, reoccurring character going forward.
Right. However, as of right now, they were not Cybermen.
They were not
They
Cybermen.
were yellow glowy things. I
Whitey glowy
felt
things or whatever.
I really liked this episode. I really like where Jodie is going, and we can talk about that in a minute. But I really didn't care about the these glowy things. I didn't care. My mind was
Yeah.
more wrapped up in the master.
Yeah.
And what?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was more concerned about that, and yeah, they were like not even a second tier story for me, like more like a
It was
tier story.
very fourth, fifth tier,
Yeah.
which means there'll be a big impact later in the season if they're
Potentially,
doing
yeah.
how they've done previous Doctor Who's.
Yeah, potentially.
The Master is an SS agent in World War II.
And I was like, how can he be, he's very, I don't know, Indian, Middle Eastern,
Yeah, yeah.
looking. How can he, and then they explain about how he learned to do something in like second grade or whatever.
Yeah, perception filter.
Yeah.
and sending it
Simple
out
perception
like
filter
it's like
and-
I love how like little single lines of dialogue is able to answer some questions.
of
Like
those
we
things,
all
yeah.
were like the entire time he shows up in an SS uniform. I'm like, how are they doing that in one simple line of dialogue? It's like, oh, that makes
Oh
sense.
yeah, it totally makes sense. I wanted to talk about Jodie.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really realize how much I dislike is a tough word, but I really liked how she kind of settled down and got a little more somber towards the end. She was
Yeah.
almost too goofy at times in the first season, and to be fair, Peter Capaldi in his first season as the Doctor was
While he's still trying to figure out how to be.
yeah. But I really liked her for like the last half of this episode. I was like, yes.
There's
She's an amazing actress.
She is. She's amazing in Broadchurch, and so to have somebody of that caliber come in, especially following Capaldi. Like Capaldi was the best actor to be the Doctor when they came in as the Doctor. I'm not saying he's the best Doctor actor, but when
He's
he came
very
in as the
credentialed
Doctor,
actor, yeah.
he was the best actor to come in, and Jodie's very good as an actor and is able to convey a lot of emotion in her face. Because of what happened, what she does in Broadchurch and everything.
yeah.
And so letting her tap into that, like Doctor Who is a big goofy time travel, teach you about history show that has some serious stuff going on at time, and
Yeah,
you need the
yeah.
main character to be able to pull off that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, David Tennant was a super broody
Yeah.
Doctor, and Matt Smith was goofy, and Peter Capaldi was kind of angry, attack eyebrows.
Yeah.
And we've yet to see what Jodie's going to be, but I really felt like the first season she was a little too silly.
I think that was a little bit of the writing. Like we've talked about this in the past. I think that was a little bit of the writing.
I really appreciated the
yeah.
change in this.
So let's talk about the big thing that happens at the end of this episode. The Master sends a hologram, or the Master has a conversation with the Doctor on the top of the Eiffel Tower during German-occupied France.
Yeah.
And he says, "Have you been back to Gallifrey recently? It's been just razed to the ground, like it's
Yeah.
been destroyed.
Yep.
You should go back and check it." And so after she beats the Master, like she always does, because the Master always is destined to lose no matter what.
Yeah.
Even when he won when he was Saxon, he still lost. Like he lost.
Yeah.
So
Because he was gone.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then
Well,
came back.
It's the Master. He's never really gone.
Right.
But she goes back and finds Gallifrey in ruins.
Yeah.
And on fire.
Yeah. It
And
basically looks like the picture from
the Day of the Doctor.
Gallifrey. Yeah,
Yeah.
From Day of the Doctor. Yeah.
Yeah, where Gallifrey falls no more, or
more,
whatever.
yeah.
And but the idea that Gallifrey has been destroyed after it had been saved by all the Doctors, and then in this hologram message, the Master says, "I learned something about the founders of Gallifrey and the founders of the Time Lords, and what I learned made me do what I did, and that's destroy Gallifrey.
Yep.
And then we get him mentioning the timeless child.
Right.
And the timeless child was brought up in the Great Monument, the Missing Monument, the second episode from the last season.
Right.
Where they talked to the creatures are talking to the doctor about something, how they see something in her past that even she can't see.
That was the one where they stole the TARDIS, or the TARDIS was missing, right? They ended up on that planet.
Yeah. And so that just opens up like a ton of questions for us in a good way. Like it's not questioning like you can't do that. It's just questioning like, okay, what does this mean going forward? What did the Master learn? Because he/she, because we got Misty, was tormented with the 4 beats for so long as Saxon, that was sent through time by the heads of Gallifrey.
Yeah.
And so he goes back and learns something and decides to, instead of, in a very Master way, just decides to destroy Gallifrey because of what he learns.
Right. Yeah. So Gallifrey was gone, and then it was back, and now it's gone again.
Right. Right.
Just to keep up. And it seems that
I would just like to point out that Gallifrey's come back twice since we last saw a new episode of Sherlock.
not that we're bitter, Moffat.
Right.
So yeah, it like he kind of alluded to it. They were created. The Doctor and the Master aren't. I don't know.
Yeah.
Aren't like.
Yeah, they're not really who we think they are.
Yeah.
Because multiple times in the last 2 episodes, the Master has said everything you know everything you think you know is a lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that really like makes me go
Yeah.
like I have questions about what that means, and I love it. I love this.
Yeah.
This is the Doctor I want. This is the Doctor Who I want.
Yeah.
I want each episode to be its own standalone. The next episode very much looks like we get a standalone episode. They'll probably throw some stuff in there that means for the overall story arc of the season. We get the FAM, Team TARDIS, finally sitting down and questioning the Doctor about who she really is, where she's from.
Yeah.
This is the first time that the 13th Doctor says, I'm from Gallifrey.
Yeah.
I can regenerate my body.
Yep. And I didn't really realize that until they pointed it out, that they hadn't, she hadn't told them this is who I am. And because usually when there's a new companion, that conversation happens fairly quickly, but
I'm from there's that whole speech that Matt Smith gives on the Christmas episode. It's essentially it's not Pirates of Penzance. It's the ship that when the Titanic is sinking and out of the sky.
Yeah.
And he does the whole, and I'm a Time Lord from Gallifrey,
Yeah.
and I've lived 900 years,
Yeah.
and I'm going to save you. That's like almost like his MO is that he comes out and says that.
Yeah.
And now we're a season and 2 episodes in, and the Doctor finally tells her companions.
Yeah.
Who
Which is weird because
kind of weird who she is.
Yeah, they, if they wanted people to be able to jump in that had never seen anything before, why did we wait an entire season to kind of explain
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems weird. Yeah, but it didn't really jump out on to me that they hadn't
but I
said
like
anything.
that the companions now, like last season, they were just like, this is cool. We're just along for the ride and whatever. And now they're like, even in 2 episodes, even though they were kind of a secondary plot line in this particular episode, there's still enough there with them where they were off on their own, doing their own thing, saving themselves.
Yeah.
There's even a great scene where the 3 of them sit there and talk about what would the Doctor do? What are our resources? Okay, if we had these resources, does that mean that we can do this?
Yeah.
And so they're solving problems like the Doctor would solve them. And I love that concept is there, so that the companions can do their own thing.
Yeah.
And the Doctor is there; she could do her own thing, but yet all of them together, but yet they don't know each other. And so that dynamic is just so. This is
Well, she knows everything. Well, she knows a lot about
right,
them,
right.
and they don't know anything about her.
Right, and that's why I'm so excited so far with these 2 episodes this season, is that they're setting up so much stuff and they're laying out so much stuff in front of us and saying, here's what it could, here's where the story could be, but we don't really know. And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that we have some idea. We have something laid out in front of us saying the story is going forward. It's not a week to week, adventure of the week thing.
Yeah.
And that's I think what was really, really missing last year. So.
Yep. Yeah. We had talked about that
Yeah.
there really wasn't an underlying continuing story. So looks like we're getting it this year, and so far so good. We're only 2 episodes in, but
so I think we're both really happy about this episode and the previous episode.
Yep.
And so what did you guys think? Let us know in the comments down below. If you're on the podcast feed, please subscribe to the podcast feed. If you're on YouTube, leave us a comment what you thought, where we're going, what you thought of this episode, where we're going. Like this video, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications. Help us out on all those social media stuff. All those links are in the description down below. We'll have more and more Doctor Who stuff as we go along with the season.
Yep.
Super excited. All right, Whovians, that's our review of this episode. We could go for another 15 or 20 minutes. So until next time, if we don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.